Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining in. Good evening, Professor Arnab Laha. It's 5:01. We'll wait for 2-3 minutes before we start off. So in the meanwhile, I just thought that I will say hello to everybody and set the context going before we start off. Yeah, I think we have a sufficient number also to begin now. Right. So good evening and a warm welcome to everyone for joining this webinar. Special thanks and a warm welcome, Professor Arnab Laha, for taking your time off on a Sunday evening to share insights on business analytics. Now, we all know that in today's data-driven world, competence in business analytics is becoming ever critical for data-driven decision making. And as the saying goes, data is the new oil and analytics is its refinery. To make information a competitive advantage, we need to leverage the power of analytics effectively. And competence in analytics has become a critical skill for managers of the new age business organizations. India's premier executive education enabler, VCNow, in association with Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, brings you a unique opportunity to build your analytics skills without impacting your work or personal life. With live interactive classes every Saturday, 3 to 6 p.m. at a convenient time for 6 to 8 months. Now, let me take the honor of introducing Professor Arnab Kumar Laha, Professor of Production and Quantitative Methods at IIM Ahmedabad. So, Professor Arnab Laha is a Master's in Statistics and a PhD from the Indian Statistical Institute. He is a member of the faculty of the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. He takes keen interest in understanding how analytics, machine learning, and artificial intelligence can be leveraged to solve complex problems of business and society. His areas of research and teaching interest include advanced data analytics, qualitative management, and risk modeling. He has published more than 25 papers which are reviewed nationally and internationally in journals of repute. Professor Arnab Laha is also voted amongst India's best school professors, business school professors by Business Today in 2006 and Business India in 2012. He was also selected by Analytics India magazine as one of the 10 most prominent analytics academicians in India in 2014 and 2017. Professor Laha is also the author of popular books on analytics, how to make right decisions, and also the editor of the book, Advances in Analytics and Application. He is on the academic advisory board of several well-known institutions and has undertaken several consultancy assignments with top corporates of India. Before I hand over to Professor Arnab Laha, may I request all participants to share their questions in the chat window on the screen. We'll answer them after Professor Laha finishes his address. So over to you, Professor Arnab Laha.
So thank you, Darius, for your kind introduction, and also all the participants of this webinar. So though this webinar is being done in connection with the recruitment of the 4th batch of the executive program on advanced business analytics that is scheduled to start within a short time, I will take this opportunity to sort of talk about the importance of business analytics in the current business scenarios. So my goal is in this short session to take about half an hour or so to broadly introduce you to what exactly is business analytics and what kind of questions does it answer. I will not endeavor to answer these questions as they require use of techniques and tools which will be properly covered in the program that we are talking about. But at least you should know that what kind of questions you can possibly answer if you know these tools. Some of you may already know these tools, and for you, it may be helpful to know that these are the business contexts where your skills can immediately apply. So I begin with answering a fundamental question, which I think it may even be considered silly to ask. And the question is that what exactly is a business? So this question, I think, was proposed a few years back to Dalai Lama, and he said, well, what is business? I really don't know what is business. So I think the whole thing of being a business is not so easy, though we use this term quite often in our daily life. So to us, a business is a delivery mechanism. A delivery mechanism of delivering value through the stakeholders. So a business organization or an entity delivers value to its stakeholders through efficient processing of resources. And of course, resources can be of various kinds. It can be raw materials, it can be various kinds of human inputs, it can be other inputs as well. So those will be the resources that a business will take, and then it will efficiently process this to deliver value to the stakeholders. Now, who are the stakeholders of this business? So a business does not operate in a vacuum. It operates typically in a society, and therefore there are multiple stakeholders of business. While in most organizations or more basic introductions to business, it is often assumed that the shareholders are its main stakeholders. But as we have proceeded over time, what we have realized is that there are multiple stakeholders of equal importance to the business. It includes its employees, who actually are also a part of the processing of the resources to deliver the value, and they are its key stakeholders. The customers, obviously, without the customers, the business does not exist. So customers are a key stakeholder of the business. The shareholders, of course, as traditionally has been the view. And what has become more and more important in the 21st century as we progress is that society has become a very important stakeholder of the business. So the business has to meet its commitment to the society while it functions. So a successful business of the kind that we see around us would, and if you look at these successful businesses carefully, you will see that it is delivering value to its stakeholders, and they may have quite conflicting requirements. So the requirements of the shareholders will be larger income or larger profits. Employees would like more salaries. Customers would like to get the product at a lesser price. And of course, the society would say that, well, we provided all these facilities, at least give us back something, which may include at least not pollute our environment, do something for the less privileged of the society, what we call corporate social responsibility, and in various other ways, it will ask the business to return some of the enabling functions that the society had provided for it to be successful in the first place. Now, if we remember this conflicting requirements of a business, you would immediately recognize that the analytics plays a very important role in this, because if you have to take care of so many things, it may not be possible for a human mind to be able to do this. So our human minds are typically good in taking simple decisions. In fact, they are very good. Human minds have a unique ability to sort of feel empathy, love, but it may not be able to take decisions at a large scale or of very large complexity efficient. And that is where we need support. And this support comes through a collection of tools and techniques which improves our efficiency of taking decisions. And these tools and techniques, this collection of tools and techniques, have come together to be known as business analytics. Now, business analytics is not really a new subject as such. So its origin goes back to the father of modern management, Frederick Taylor, who applied these techniques about 100 years back. So it was in the early part of the 20th century, analytics started to get used in businesses, mostly in the field of operations and making operational decisions. During the Second World War, a new subject was born out of these efforts, which was referred to as operations research, which continues to date as an important subject of study. Now, this progress was happening gradually, and we were also witnessing the third industrial revolution, which was the rise of the information technology. So from the late 1940s, early 1950s till now, we have seen a steady increase in computing power, aided by a fall in prices. Okay, so we have seen computing power going up and the cost of computing per unit coming down, and that has been a great boon. And by early 1990s, it was becoming apparent that it was now profitable to deploy these analytics techniques at scale and improve the efficiencies of the businesses greatly. And that movement, which started in the middle of 1990s, has taken center place today. And what we now call artificial intelligence is essentially a refined version of advanced analytics. Now, what kind of decisions can analytics be applied? And when I use the term analytics, I use it in a broad sense. So these are tools which are driven from multiple disciplines. Some of these tools are properly placed in statistics. Some of the tools are more properly placed in machine learning. And some of these are essentially IT tools. So they're very effective IT tools like dashboarding, data warehousing, and so on. So they are actually a conglomerate of tools coming from multiple disciplines. And when we are sort of looking at all these tools together, we get tremendous power. And we are able to answer some of the very difficult questions that are posed before a business. Say, for example, a business may be asked that, what are your most profitable customers, or who are your most profitable customers? Now this question may look very easy, but sometimes for businesses, it's very hard to figure out. So one of the early successful applications of analytics was done by Capital One. Now, Capital One is a bank, and they were sort of trying to figure out that who are their most profitable customers. So they were looking at their credit card portfolio, and they were looking at all the customers they have for the credit card, and they were trying to understand who among these group of customers are the ones who would be most profitable to us. And they used data-based decision making. They crunched the data, used good statistical modeling to figure out that a group of customers who are sort of often termed as revolvers were their most profitable customers. Now, identifying revolvers is not an easy task. So revolvers, by the way, are persons who are good at heart, but their income is possibly not steady, or is in many cases not in equilibrium with the expenses. So at some point of time, it might happen they may need some external cash, and at other points they may be able to return the cash. So this liquidity is required by them because of the nature of work that they do, but they're generally good at heart. They will try very hard to pay back the amount, and not only pay back the amount, but also pay back the amount with a handsome interest. And these are the group of customers which are most profitable to a credit card company. The question is, how do you identify them? Identifying very good customers who always pay on time is easy. Not so easy are the customers who run away with your money. So basically, customers who are likely to default, they are also not very difficult to find out. But customers who are sort of this kind, who are good at heart but are sort of short of cash, Now, these are the customers who are more difficult to find out, and Capital One did wonderful analytics to sort of figure out who are these, what characteristics do they have, and of course, that became one of the most successful stories of early applications of analytics in banking domain. Now, similarly are the questions like, who are the most satisfied customers of a business? Now, customers who are satisfied are likely to spread word about your product. So almost all organizations in their early stages would love to have a set of customers who are extremely satisfied, would go about telling others, their friends and families and relatives, that I use this product and they may use it too. And word of mouth is one of the most potential ways of advertising. And therefore, satisfied customers are very important. And if you can retain your satisfied customers, make them loyal to you, they're great. So you must have encountered several loyalty schemes of various retailers and others who try to so whenever they figure out that you are a good customer, they go all out and give you benefits so that you remain loyal to the brand or loyal to their company. A bad thing about of a service of an organization is that some customers may feel slighted. Okay? So they may feel that they are not getting the value of the money that they are putting in. So these are the customers who would attract. So they will go to your competitor, and most of these will never complain. They will simply switch. Now, if you can figure out beforehand that, okay, these are my customers who are not satisfied with our service and are on the verge of quitting, you may be able to retain them. And why should you retain them? Why not just allow them to go? In many businesses, the cost of acquiring a customer is far higher, sometimes 10 times or more higher than retaining a customer. So the retention cost of a customer is often much lesser than the acquiring cost of a customer, and therefore it is far more profitable for organizations to retain their customers, and particularly those who are on the verge of leaving. If they can retain, you can actually make good money out of that. So again, this is not an easy task, and analytics plays a very important role in figuring out these customers who are likely to attract. Another area where where analytics has been widely used has been finance. And financial analytics, of course, there's one branch of financial analytics which is very specific to the markets, which I'm not talking about much today. So I'm more of talking about analytics that is useful in an organizational context, which may mean trying to predict the revenue of the organization in the coming financial year. So that's a very important number. Almost all managers look forward to. In fact, you know that in sometimes guidances are issued by the organization based on the projections that they get. So what would be the likely revenue? And this is not an easy task. A company, particularly a large company, will have thousands of customers who will place an order, who will not, and when they will place, whether you will be able to service them. So all of that needs to be sort of crunched, and forecasts need to be made. So revenue forecasting becomes a very important activity. Another very important activity is spend forecasting, because as your money comes, you are also spending, and if it happens that you are spending more than or spending before the money comes, it will inevitably lead to working capital problems, and you will spend a lot of money getting short-term loans from banks or other financial institutions. So therefore, it would be important for you to sort of figure out that how would you spend it? What is the best way you would spend money on capital, equipment purchase, on working capital, on various other things? How would you, at what times will you spend the money? How do you sort of break up the flow so that your working capital charges become less, or some other objectives? So therefore, spend analytics is another very important area that people are looking at. A third very important thing for organizations is to figure out that is a project worth investing. So when I'm talking about a project, So I'm thinking of organizations would entail into various different activities, new activities, sometimes sort of redoing an activity which has been done earlier. So these are sort of projects that organizations take up. Now the question is that would the returns from the project that I take up would be enough to justify the investment that I have? And here again, analytics plays a critical role in figure out whether on the investment is worthwhile or not. Another early application, and this application goes back to 1980s, was to figure out whether a company is likely to go bankrupt. Okay, so this was initially done by Altman, who created a kind of score known as Altman's Z score, and the whole idea was that based on that score, can I predict that 3 years down the line or 2 years down the line whether a firm would go bankrupt or not? So if I am making an advance to that company, will the company pay me back, or will I have to go into a costly process of liquidation or restructuring to get my money back? So these are very important questions, and we have seen that in many instances in India, companies have failed, companies have not paid back huge amounts of loans to the bank, and therefore it is very important for the banks and other financial institutions to have analytical processes in place which will tell them beforehand that is that loan that they are planning to give justifiable, is this customer bankable or not. We have already talked about individual loans, particularly credit card loans or loans given for agricultural purposes, whether these loans will come back. So you know that in microgroup finance, Muhammad Yunus, the Nobel laureate, had shown that small groups work very well. So say for example, if you are making small loans to a group of people for a specified activity, in a large number of cases, the loan would be paid back with interest, and it will not default. Now that they have been able to figure out a way to do that by creating those small groups. But in general, if you are giving small loans or small personal loans, you have to sort of figure out from the history of the person whether that person is worth giving the loan or not, or whether the person will run away with the money or not. Of course, CRISIL has the CRISIL scores, which are widely used for this purpose, and there are scores even internationally known as the FICO scores, where a customer's creditworthiness is judged through this through the loans. So in India, it's not the CRISIL, it is the CIBIL. The CIBIL scores are generally used by organizations which are planning to give loans. So basically, they tell whether the customer is risky in terms of defaulting or not paying back the loan or not. And risk management also plays a very integral part of this. Operations, as I talked about, was one of the early areas where analytics was applied, and there are various operational decisions which are analytical in nature. And in current times, this has become even more important. Say, for example, when you are thinking of operating a very heavy equipment for mining purposes deep underground. Now, if a machine of this kind fails underground, it can become a major problem, not only in terms of servicing it, but it can also be a problem for the miners, and can be a life and death kind of a situation can occur because of that failure. So preventive maintenance is important, but what is even more important nowadays is predictive maintenance. So can I predict when this machine will fail, and can I do the maintenance beforehand so that the failure never occurs? So the predictive maintenance has been enabled because of the increasing presence of sensors through networks, which is generally being referred to as Internet of Things. So that is enabling huge amount of data to come, and that is sort of enabling this predictive maintenance. And then, of course, in supply chains, and we have seen this COVID-19 impacting supply chains last year greatly, and even now some supply chain elements are under stress because of various lockdowns in different parts of the world. Now all this indicates that how do you build a resilient supply chain? How do you predict these kind of disruptions, and how do you plan for contingencies? And again, analytics plays a very critical role when you are doing that. Apart from, of course, inventory, because inventory or what is referred to as the supply, the safety stocks play a very important role in building resilience in supply chains. Employees are one of the most important stakeholders of business, as I mentioned, and therefore, unless the employees are happy and productive, it may not, the organization may not be able to perform at its best. So analytics has been used significantly over the last decade or so in trying to understand HR processes through data and through the tools and techniques of analytics that we have. And these has been deployed to figure out whether employees need training, because if you ask a person to do a job without properly training them, the job will be shoddily done, or there will be other consequences. So therefore, employee training and the identification of need for training, analytics plays a very important role. Employee satisfaction, or what causes employee satisfaction? Does work from home causes satisfaction or dissatisfaction? What level of work from home should be there? What other things should be done so that the work from home becomes less monotonous? So all of that would be very important considerations for the employers in the coming year, and these will all be, and there will be need for database decision making in these contexts, and analytics will play a very important role. Identification of the best employees, identification of unhappy employees who are likely to act right are again extremely important things. So often we have seen that employees leave an organization after an incident, particularly with their immediate higher up. Now, if that can be anticipated and contingency measures can be put in place, the employee could have been retained. And as with customers, retaining employees is often a much better choice than hiring a new one, because the employee, the skills and the knowledge that the employee would have after working with your organization for a while would be far more than a new employee who just joins the organization and will take a couple of months to sort of understand the whole processes. Compensation management is another critical area where analytics play an important role. What kind of compensation should you give for a skill set? Is it lower or higher than the market? And what compensation and other benefits, or what structuring of the compensation package should you have to be able to retain the employee for the desired amount of time? So that is something, again, where analytics is playing a critical role. Apart from the business applications, we have a whole lot of applications that are coming in, and all very exciting, but these are not really business applications. So in our program, we will be mentioning, but may not really focus on these kind of applications there. So there are very important applications that are happening in healthcare, and particularly in the context of COVID-19, we have seen how telemedicine and artificial intelligence can be deployed in the healthcare context. Across the world, we have now very sound case studies for that. There are exciting applications that are happening in education, particularly in the online education space, which is currently the predominant mode, but even after the pandemic, online education will continue to remain, and the blended education form, of which the EPABA program is one, is likely to strengthen over the next few years. And so what is the right blend for this? Analytics can play a very critical role in that. Sports analytics is another big area, very different from the other two, but again, a big industry where we need some very interesting which generates a whole lot of interesting data and that's another big field where some of the techniques that we discuss in this program can also be applied. Entertainment, another area where there's a lot of potential of applications, and of course areas like defense and government, where it is critical for us to use analytics. And of course defense has been an early adopter of analytics because of its needs, but again we'll see a lot of offtake. So what is the common theme of these analytics applications with business analytics is several of the techniques are similar and they are transferable. The skills in these sectors are transferable to these analytical problems. Of course, as with any new domain, domain-specific skills will be required, and one has to have that knowledge to be able to use the analytics technique correctly. So what are the core competences that a young professional should have who is wanting to look at career in this? The first and foremost is that they should have a good understanding of the business domain. So that is important. The number two importance is that they should be able to compute. That means they should have a reasonable proficiency in computing. It is not that they need to be a grand programmer to be able to succeed in analytics applications, because a lot of these are also packaged. So therefore, because this comes packaged, a lot of programming drudgery is taken care of. But at the same time, familiarity with computing is going to be of great help. And of course, a knowledge of statistics and machine learning or analytical modeling. And that is where this course will contribute largely. So our course will contribute largely towards building the statistical and machine learning capabilities and some computing abilities in the participants. So with that, I will open the question. I'll be open for questions and comments.
Yes. Thank you, Professor Laha. I mean, we have tons of questions, so we have shortlisted some and tried to, answer and address. So some of them all has already been addressed. So I think Niharika, Sagar, and Kamlesh, Professor Laha already spoke about, the preparedness for you to join the program. I mean, what kind of, readiness that you should have in terms of prerequisites, knowledge, level of maths, etc. We spoke about that. There's a question from Siddharth, Professor Laha, which says that what does the program cover in terms of the tools and techniques? What is the coverage of the program?
So this tool, the program focuses on all the three major paradigms of analytics, which is descriptive analytics, which primarily deals with presentation of the data in the right form, building dashboards, trying to sort of communicate to the management the essence of the data. Then we have the predictive analytics, which is basically aimed at telling things like what will happen next based on whatever has happened in the past. And we also have some amount of prescriptive analytics where we are trying to sort of answer questions like what would be the best decision to take in this circumstance. So these three are covered. And of course, we have a project component at the end, and students can explore other applications. Say, for example, if someone is interested in things like trying to do some sort of artificial intelligence based or explore something based on artificial intelligence, some newer aspect of artificial intelligence, they are welcome to do that.
Thank you. So that's good. So there is a question from Swati. She wanted to understand, and she's a little confused. And I think most people also, because I mean the way these words are being used. So the difference between data analytics and business analytics. So she's asking.
Okay. So if you say data analytics, it's a very broad term. So anything to deal with data would come under data analytics, and so apart from business analytics, it will cover all the other analytics that I talked about. So healthcare, education, sports, entertainment, defense, government. So this is a very large thing. So crunching data to solve a problem can be thought of as data analytics. So it's a very big field. And so in that, if you look at techniques and tools which are of immediate relevance to be used in a business context, are called business, or these are called business analytics tools. And now, as I said in the last, that many of these tools have also applications in other kinds of analytics. So a person who does a course on business analytics, if he or she is asked to solve a problem in the healthcare domain, the person may be able to do it provided he or she is able to sort of understand the domain specific details, because many of these applications differ in their domain specific details. So if the person can understand that, or has the capability to understand that, they can use the same tool with success in a very different data analytic context. So the tools are very similar, only the context is significantly different.
Right. I think that was well explained. So there's a question from Prashant, and he wanted to understand the inclination of the program. So is it good enough for a business manager to kind of do this program and apply it in his line of business vis-a-vis the tech part of about the program. So the balance of business and tech to be used in the program.
As we have called this program program on advanced business analytics, its focus is on business. So, and our goal is that a participant who comes out of this program will be able to apply some of these tools in their immediate future in their own jobs. So that is our goal for the program. So that's a key metric. So therefore, I feel that a person who goes through this program with sincerity and puts their heart into it, I think they will be able to do that without much difficulty. And in the past, in the 3 batches that has passed out, I have seen several of them actually do that. They've applied these tools in their own jobs, or have changed jobs and applied them in their new jobs.
I think that kind of brings up to a follow-up question from a few participants in terms of they wanted to understand the profile of the batch, the earlier batches. I mean, people who have done, what are the profiles of participants who have done that?
So generally, when we select for this program, we look at a good technical abilities. Technical abilities in the sense that here there are a couple of things that we actually look for. This program does need a bit of I will not say abilities, but comfort in using mathematics and mathematical symbols. If they know statistics, great, but statistics is generally covered, the basics. If they know the basics, we recommend a book also later on once they get boarded. So if they're familiar with or they're comfortable with mathematics, that may not be very difficult to pick up. So comfort in mathematics is one thing that we look at. The second thing we look at is their comfort in computing. Okay, so they should be, we are not looking for dazzling programmers, but also I think if someone has no clue of how to program, it may be a little challenging. So a programming capability is desired, but not at a very high level. So if they can do some basic programming, even if they can do some basic good macro writing in Excel, I think that should be a good prerequisite to start. The language R and Python, both of the languages require a bit of background. So if it is not that you cannot pick it up entirely in this program, but it will be, I mean, you will be competing with people who are, or you will be not competing, it's not the right word, you will be working with people who are already comfortable in programming, and that sometimes create a little bit of a jarring effect. But apart from that, I think, I mean, if you are able to have, if you are comfortable in mathematics and comfortable in computing, I think you are ideal for the program. If you have exposure in business where you have seen these kind of data, it is a great plus. So that is a delight. So if you do not have any of these two, I think you'll have to sort of put in some extra effort, particularly before the program, so that you can program starts, so that you become familiar with these things.
Yes. So we have a follow-up question from Girish, who wanted to understand the coverage in marketing analytics, and a similar question from Anu, who was asking about whether marketing analytics will also cover digital marketing part of analytics.
So I have, so that's why I gave the presentation. So I think the questions that I have raised in marketing analytics, so typically the tools and techniques that we discuss will allow people to answer these questions. Okay, so I will leave it at that, because this is a very nuanced question, and one can go to great lengths to answer this. I will not. So what I'm not doing is, I'm not trying to drop in names of techniques. What we believe is that the technique has to be chosen based on the problem that you are solving. So it is no good telling that, yeah, we will teach regression, or we will teach logistic regression, or we will teach artificial neural networks, because the tool that we will use has to be tailored to the problem context that you have. So all I can say is that they will be able to answer these questions that I have raised.
Wonderful. So there is a similar, lobby in the finance domain, chartered accountants and people from the finance, field who are wanting to know about the coverage in the financial analytics, and there's specifically Mr. Panda, MS Panda, wants to know whether a chartered accountant can also do a program like this.
Yeah, chartered accountants have gone through this program. They can do it, provided, I talked about the 2 comfort zones. If they have that, they can do it. There's no issue with it. We have in the past had chartered accountants who have done pretty well. So I think that's not a problem. Of course, one has to put a bit of work, but I think that is true for almost all participants, irrespective of the background. IM programs are not leisurely programs. They are programs that will extract every pound of flesh from you. So one has to be willing to work hard if you want to join this program. If you want to make a bang for your buck, please put in work.
I mean, then only I think the sense of achievement and satisfaction will come, right? So we have a question from Sagar. So he's asking about does business analytics come under data science, and so the difference between data science and business analytics.
I mean, all these terms have been coined in the last 2 decades. So if you go back 2 decades, these terms were not there. So data science is an omnibus term, and which currently means, and this is the current meaning of data science, is the IT aspect of data, which means efficient storing of data, efficient retrieval of data, maybe in-stream processing of the data. So that part, which is highly technology intensive, relies on all these techniques like Hadoop and its related technologies. So those sort of get under programs which go by the name data science. So when a program says that this is a master's in data science, they are basically trying to indicate to the participants that it's more like an IT program which is focused on IT and technologies of storage and retrieval. While they may cover some analytics, but that's not their focus. Whereas analytics programs are programs which are more focused on modeling of the data and not so much on the IT aspects of the data. So our program is more focused on modeling of the data rather than the IT aspects of data storage and data retrieval.
That was very clear, Professor Laha. And I think, when you ask for the pound of flesh, somebody was asking something back in return. Was asking whether the program gives an alumni status along with the certification.
So I think I leave that to our administrative team to answer. I think there are norms for getting alumni status, and
yes.
and
So yes, I mean, as per the brochure,
I think
yeah.
if you
So
meet the norm, you will get it.
Yeah. So on successful completion of program, so there are norms that are there. Yeah, and there are norms for completion of the program in terms of grades, and so yes, I mean, most people who pass out definitely get the alumni.
Yeah, I think all of them have got till now.
Yeah, that's very heartening for a lot of people to hear. Okay. So there is a question from Harish. He said that he is a data scientist in Indian MNC working in the energy domain across geographies, and how this course can aid him or help him.
Now, energy is a very large user of analytics, and it is one of the industries which have used analytics since 1960s. So Shell and others are pioneers in use of analytics in this space. So of course there is a huge application opportunities. I'm not getting into the specific details. Yeah, I mean, if you put in your effort and learn these techniques, I don't think there will be a dearth of opportunities to use.
Good. So, and this is also a very quintessential question asked by a lot of people who are also get confused between, so will the language be taught will be R or Python for machine learning? And this is a question which all students have in their mind when they talk about a business analytics program or a data science program.
R is a language which is specifically made for statistical model, and therefore R is a very useful language to deal with in for solving modeling problems in the case of analytics. So R is our language that we use. Python is a very powerful language for using data science of the kind that I just said. It has enormously strong capabilities in pulling data, in working with very large data sets. So Python is also a very important language, particularly if you're focused on data science kind of tasks. Python has good capabilities in machine learning as well as in some web applications. It's a reasonably easy language to learn, though learning advanced aspects of it requires a background. So what we have done is, while our program is primarily on R, we also have a module on Python, where Python is taught and its applications, particularly in the context of using machine learning, is covered, particularly say applications using the TensorFlow architecture and so on. So we do both R and Python, but R is more focused than Python. But yeah, both are covered.
Right. So there's a question by a few participants on the last date of the program for application. So I think I'll answer that. So the last date for application is the end of April. So whoever is interested has to definitely apply right now in the next 1 or 2 days or in the coming week, so that we can access, and there's a lot of documentation that we go through, etc., for selection also. Right. So there's a question from Nitin Juneja. He's asking that in terms of the age group or the experience profile of participants that people should have. So is there any experience profile that you look for, or even people with 15 years, 17 years are kind of eligible? I mean, can go ahead and do this program.
We do, so there is a minimum experience requirement that is mentioned, and I think we meet that. But apart from that, we do not discriminate based on experience. What we have seen is, if there is interest, and I particularly remember someone when I talk about this, who was a very senior person, and the amount of effort that he put in this program is memorable. So I think, so therefore, I think if you have that aptitude, I will be happy to have. there's no bar in terms of, generally we have a good mix. And for the last programs, I think we had a general average experience of around 10 years. So it was a good mix, and we have a few very sharp youngsters and some very sharp senior people who bring in some very valuable domain knowledge in the business.
Yeah, I think sometimes diversity, actually works very well. I mean, you have experience along with the interest and knowledge of the new folks, right?
Absolutely.
So there is a question, I think, by Girish Samal on, will that be an executive alumni or general alumni? So let me clarify. IIM Ahmedabad has a single alumni status. So it will be IIM Ahmedabad alumni status. There is no separate executive education alumni. So, right. So there's a question on a business analyst working in an IT company. I mean, if he does this program, how did it help? Would it help?
So of course, I'm telling based on my limited experience. So it seems that a lot of IT companies are working towards adding analytical solutions as their offering. So I will not name them, but I regularly talk to some of these people, and they are sort of very, they're either doing it already or they're thinking in terms of adding significantly strong analytical capabilities as their solution offering. Now, if that happens, of course, young people who are at business analyst roles in these companies can actually get an opportunity to work on those projects because they will have that toolkit and the skill set for doing that. So in that way, they can benefit out of this. Of course, I do not know specific companies will have their own plans, but that's what in general I have seen.
Right. So there were a few questions, I think, since we were talking about the last few days for admission. So basically, the procedure of taking admission. So you don't have to worry. You'll get an email with all the details, the brochure, and the application link, along with contact numbers. I mean, I will also ask some of my colleagues to share their contact numbers in the chat so that you can note them down and reach out to them along with their email IDs also. So you'll get all the information on how to go ahead and apply for the program. There was a question from Harish. I think considering the current pandemic, and Professor, you spoke about applications in healthcare. He's in clinical research, and so he was asking, considering the amount of data that is being generated in clinical research and how this could be helpful.
Oh yeah, so this course is not on healthcare analytics, and at some point of time I may think of a course on that area. But this, yeah, it's indeed true that healthcare is generating huge data, and particularly COVID-19 is one of the success stories of this data. In fact, the way it has been managed in many countries has been very much dependent on data. Even our success in handling the first wave last year was quite efficiently done because of the data that we had. So therefore, this is a very important area where we are looking at, and I think people have sort of realized the importance of analytics in healthcare because they see all these numbers all the time. That what is the efficacy of Covaxin, what is the efficacy of Covishield, what is the efficacy of Pfizer BioNTech, and so on. So all these numbers are analytically driven through clinical research and clinical trials. So anyone who has a interest in this can use the skill set of the program in the clinical domain. You need some adaptation. I'm not saying that you can, without the domain knowledge, clinical research is a sort of a gated field. So you have to go through that. But the techniques are same or similar. Domain is different and it's much more regulated.
Interesting question by Elton De Silva, and he's trying to relate this program to real life applications and how does this map to real life business models, and are there projects, and how do you use data on, I mean, all these tools and techniques on implementing, in organizations?
Well, of course, organizations across the globe have figured out that analytics is profitable, and that's why this massive spurt in analytics. So the question is no longer on a proof of concept. So the question is an implementation. So I don't think any senior manager anywhere in the world would say, what is the value of analytics? Because I think we have come past that stage. That was the stage in 2005, 2007, around those time when people used to ask that, what is the value of doing all this? So I think now the value has been demonstrated. The very success of Amazon and Facebook and Microsoft, so all of these have already sort of demonstrated in ample strength the power of these techniques. So the question is, how do you implement it, and how do you sort of go about it? So it's a long story, but what I would say is that it actually, most organizations will have to be comfortable with IT first. So once they have the IT in place, they will have the required data, and once they have the data, which is generally a byproduct of having a good IT system, they can get started on analytics. So I would say any organization which has a decent IT system is ready for analytics. How they do it, of course, it depends on the vision of the organization.
Right. Professor, I think he was asking from the point of view of the program. So, I mean, how will the program help? I mean, does the program actually do real business models, real cases, and real business models implementation on the project?
So the IIM Ahmedabad uses a case-based pedagogy. So a lot of cases are done. So these are management cases which often have a fairly large amount of data along with it. We also have a end of the course project, which the participants do, and they can choose data from any source they want. They can get organizational data if their organization permits to release it, or they can get data from various open sources, and they can get their hands dirty and make a presentation at the end of the course. That's a mandatory part of the program. Without that, you don't get a completion certificate. So that way we try to build in a lot of real life experience in the program. And these cases are not necessarily toy cases. It's not like an example. So these are cases which has a business context, and you are trying to solve the case for answering a business question.
And so while I think you were talking about organizations building, having IT and then managing data, there was a question I think people have asked on the coverage in big data and visualization. You can throw some light on that.
No, visualization is the answer is yes, it is covered. Visualization is an important part of the course. Now, big data is a very diffused terminology. So some parts of the big data which is on the analytical side we are discussing. Some part of the big data which is on the data science domain, more on IT like Hadoop and other technologies, we are not discussing.
Okay. Somebody has asked if the fees for the program. I'll share that. So basically, the fees for the program is 3,67,150, and it's payable in 3 installments. Approximately comes to around 1,22,000 in every installment. So that should kind of answer the question on fees.
Plus GST.
Yeah, Suresh, you have some question? Yeah.
I said plus GST.
Plus GST. Yes, sorry, plus GST. Yes. Thank you. Suresh, any questions that you I mean?
I think mostly most of the questions have been covered.
Yeah.
And the remaining questions, I think we can take it up individually one-on-one also.
Yes.
I think most of the questions are covered in this presentation, and after that we have taken the remaining questions.
So I think I'll once again reiterate that we'll be sending you an email with all the information, with the program brochure, the details of the dates and the fees and the details of the fees. And there'll be a number where you can kind of reach to us. And, so you can kind of always reach out to us if you have any kind of questions that you have post this.
Yeah, Pranjal Gupta, you will be getting a certificate on completion of this session.
Yeah,
without any
right.
So I think few of the participants were keen to know about the, if you can clearly tell them the duration of the program and the format, the delivery format and all. So that would be very good.
Okay, so shall I take it or Darius will?
You can take it. I think it's absolutely your domain.
So this program is a blended learning program having 3 campus modules planned. Now I have to be very careful on this. It will, whether we will be able to hold the campus modules or not will depend on the government clearances in place at that time. We would love to have them, but safety is our paramount interest, and therefore we are not emphasizing on that currently. But plan, yes, the plan is like that. And we will be having classes, 2 sessions every week, where we will discuss these topics. Each session will have some assignments, some readings, which we would expect participants to go through. So the typical way this happens is that the case is already informed, so you know which case will be taken up. So you read the case. If the case has a data, you have the data. You dirty your hands on this and come, and then the professor takes it up. He discusses, and of course the basics will be discussed, and then the case will also be discussed. Why we want you to dirty your hands before coming to the class is that then you can raise some pertinent questions and get clarifications in the class itself. And we have seen that, and that's the experience that we have of 60 years of case method teaching, is that helps particularly executives in understanding the applicability of the method. And without that part of without putting in that effort, that learning does not come. So therefore, that is very important. So you will have to devote a significant amount of time to make the most of this program.
I think somebody has asked about when is this program and what date and time. So it is on Saturday 3 to 6 p.m. I think an extremely convenient time for everybody, right? So I mean, so you can, block your Saturday 3 to 6 for this. Just see if there are any few last questions, although we have kind of crossed the time limit. So, Professor, if you want to answer one, there is one question on by Vipin Saxena on business analytics and how it can be used in armed forces.
Well, okay, there are many applications actually. I mean, one of the early applications, and this was really long back during the Second World War. And remember, in Second World War, the Germany attacked Britain when Winston Churchill was the Prime Minister of Britain. And one of the fundamental questions that were raised was that where would the generals actually take shelter? The conventional wisdom at that point of time in the army, or the British army, was that all the generals get into a huddle in a very safe bunker. One of the brightest minds of those days, and I'm proud that he came to Indian Statistical Institute after it was formed, and became an Indian citizen. In fact, he passed away in Bhubaneswar. JBS Holden actually had a different view. He did his calculations and communicated that it is extremely dangerous to put all the generals in the huddle and put it in one place. It is much better that they go to a safe bunker anywhere nearby, so they are all scattered. And what is the advantage of that? That if one of them is unfortunately hit, at least the others will be able to take a command and control. If that single bunker gets hit, and then there is no command and control left. So therefore, he did some very interesting analytics and suggested to the British Army, and it was actually implemented. So that is a very early success of analytical techniques. And there are many others. In fact, many of the techniques that we talk about in this course have found very interesting applications in defense. But maybe I will keep these stories to the program.
That was indeed very interesting, actually. And I think on that note, I mean, I think on that interesting story note, I think we will kind of, end the, webinar. So Suresh, Pulak, if you have any questions or any points to kind of share.
Nothing from us.
Okay. Right.
So I just have one thing to tell everyone that since we have very limited seats for this program, and by the end of this month we will be concluding the application process. So any of you who are really keen, you need to apply as fast as possible. So after the webinar is over, you'll receive a communication from our side with the brochure, with the application link and everything. The selection process is very simple. You have to apply online along with your entire details and documentation support in terms of your experience and professional qualification and experience support. You need to have minimum 2 years of work experience after your graduation, and with minimum 50% marks to apply. After you post in your application will go for screening. Our esteemed program director will screen your application, and based on your profile selection, you will be intimated for admission, and then you can go ahead with the admission process. So that is the step-by-step process of application, and we plan to commence the batch, by the end of May. Tentatively 22nd of May is the batch start date. So request you to hurry up in case you are keen to apply.
April 25th is the last date of application.
Yes, and April 25th is the last date of application. So pretty compact time to act on your application process.
Okay, so I think on that note, like to thank everybody for taking their time off, and especially Professor Laha for a very interesting and enlightening session on analytics, the history and how it has evolved, and the varied applications and the stories behind it. I'm sure your program is going to be extremely interesting and will be a great value add for a lot of people who will be able to use it as a new age competence for all new age managers. Thank you, Professor Arnab Kumar once again.
Thank you.
Right.
If you can share the slide of the contact details, that will be helpful for our participants. Pradeep, if you can activate the sharing.
Yeah. So thank you, Professor Arnab Kumar, and thank you everybody. We're just sharing the details, so we will share on the chat also. And if you need to get in touch with us, we'll be sharing that details for the thing.
Thank you, Professor Shah, for your
yeah. We will be sharing this.
So can I log out of this?
Yeah, you can. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank you. Good night.
Well, look, I think we can share it in the chat, and we can send it in the mail. Yeah.
I have already done that.
Okay.
So, I've shared the details on the common chat. So, for the reference of everyone, and anyway, we'll be communicating them over mail also.
Right. Yeah, so
Okay.
the recording of the webinar will also be made available. So we'll be
Yes.
sharing the same, right?
Yes.
Okay.
By tomorrow, the recording of the webinar will be available.
Right. Okay. Thank you. I think, Pradeep, we can